We're back for season 6 of my podcast. I'm all about putting the human factor back into business by helping organisations become places where people are happy, well, and able to perform at their best. And that's what my guests shed light on with their expertise and experience. As those who know me will be very familiar with, my mantra is simple: get people right, get business right. And that means we'll be covering a whole range of topics that impact on employee experience, engagement and mental well-being. And many of you will know that I hate tick boxes. So we'll be kicking those out, getting beneath the surface of shiny new initiatives, stripping back layers of complexity and going back to the fundamentals of good business. That's the people. This series runs alongside the launch of Leadership Labs and Manager Labs that I'm excited to be facilitating with the fabulous Gemma Ellison of Heart Leadership. These are interactive and dynamic communities that turn typical L&D on its head. If you are a manager or leader and want an opportunity to problem solve, challenge the status quo, experiment and evaluate, all within a small supportive group, get in touch. More information and contact details are in the podcast notes. I'm your host, Lisa, psychologist, psychotherapist and founder of It's Time for Change. Thank you for joining me on Beyond the Water Cooler. So we are back today and I am with the very lovely Sarah Cockcroft, who's manager at OceanWise. Good morning, Sarah.
Hi, Lisa. Hi.
I can see the out the window behind you. You actually have a bit of sunshine where you are.
It's a bit deceptive. It looks bright. It's raining.
Oh, is it?
It is, yes.
I like your glass in your windows then.
Yes, it's magic.
So I was really keen to invite you to join me on this podcast after talking with the equally fabulous Mike Quinnell, who was saying Sarah's just the most awesome manager. And we have, there's so much talked about, isn't there, and written about in terms of managers and what they should be doing and what they're not doing and the pressure on them and so on. And actually, I'm very aware that managers have a huge amount of weight on their shoulders to do their job really well. And so when you then hear about people who are doing it very well and who are achieving great results, to the point where Mike was a little bit put out because I think you pipped him on there was a survey about how happy employees were, and he's always one of those people who's really high up, and he said, "Oh, Sarah beat me. Her team were even happier." So I was like, actually, we just need to unpick that a little bit, because I know you do things really well, but you also have your eyes really open to what maybe doesn't work so well just in the world of managing people and what could be done differently. So it's almost shedding a bit of a direct light from someone who has seen it from different angles for companies to know what they perhaps could be doing better in that space. So we're focusing all about managers today. So I'm looking forward to kind of really diving into that subject. So before we get into that, you've recently started at OceanWise, lucky them, and you've moved from a much larger company. So tell us a little bit about your role in terms of what your role actually looks like as a manager now, and how you got into that, what that is all about.
Yeah, sure. So yes, my current role is yet to be not to confirmed, but I don't yet know what exactly I'm going to be needed to do because I've only been there 2 weeks. But it's very exciting. It is quite scary, of course, but it's an exciting challenge. They are a smaller company than my previous company, and that has challenges as well as huge advantages, in my opinion. And they are going through a sort of period of growth, or they have been over the last few years, and that's, I'm sure, likely to go into the future as well. So it's an exciting time for the company, and it's an exciting challenge for me because I get to think about how I want to do it, and that's not something I really think I've given much thought to in the past. My previous roles have been more sort of organically grown, whereas this is, right, I'm coming in, I'm a manager, who do I want to be, how do I want to do it, what do they want from me, all of those questions, which I just don't think normally I certainly haven't given enough time to thinking about in the past. And I don't know whether others do when those roles are, as I say, sort of more organic, and you sort of fall into them to some extent.
I would definitely say that on the whole people don't, from my experience. And it's the one thing that I talk about all the time about how managers shape their role with intention. And most people don't. They just fall into it and do whatever they think should be done based on what they've seen other people doing, or perhaps what their manager was like, or they're just guessing. And to have that opportunity to stop and consciously think about who you are and what you want to do and who you want to be and how you need to be. Even you said before we pressed record for this that you're just having a couple of hours to think about, okay, what does management mean, and what are the goods and the not so good points, and just having that space to think about it, you said, was really useful for you.
Yeah, definitely. In this kind of like, oh right, I need to think about management because I'm talking to Lisa about it soon. It's like, right, what does that mean to me? Like what do I think of it? And yeah, like you say, it's that, okay, when has it been good? When has it been not so good? When were times where I went, wow, really? Like that's not how I'd want to be, or oh, okay, that did work. So yeah, all of those things that shape us, it's the good and the bad, they all go into it. And actually, yes, just having that time and thinking, okay, what what's been my journey to date? Which
Mm,
bits am I going to take with me? Which bits do I want to leave behind? Was quite therapeutic.
good.
And yeah, not something, I don't mind admitting I don't normally spend my evenings thinking about management techniques, but it was a good one to do. So yeah,
Good.
thank you.
Pleasure. So how did you come to be a manager? So at your last company, and I'm assuming that's where you took on a manager role. How did that actually come about, and was that then developed specifically, or were you just plonked into it to get
Oh,
on?
I was definitely an accidental manager to start with.
Okay.
So yeah, I work in the world of oceanography, and I started out as a graduate oceanographer in that company, and probably for the first maybe 4 or 5 years was very much learning the trade, learning what's what and how to do it all, um, undertaking lots and lots of field work on and off boats, all of that kind of side of things. Um, as the team also grew, so I think there were only 6 of us when I started, and then when I think again, I started to think about, well, when did I actually start taking on management? I think it was that sort of 4 or 5 years in kind of stage. And I think by that point we were probably about 12 people, something like that. So my role very much did grow organically with the team growth, um, which is where the sort of accidental manager comes in. It's like, oh, okay, we're quite big now. Someone needs to be in charge of this and be in charge of that. And on one level, I think it was great because I I felt like I could lead and manage that team because I knew what was going on. I knew how to do it. I'd done it for many years at that point, or a few years maybe in some people's eyes. Um, but it was also a challenge because it was a growing team, with various growing pains associated with it. And it was also a very close knit group of friends, really, which again, huge positives, but also challenges. Um, so yeah, it was organic, it was accidental. Well, in my opinion, it was accidental, although I think my boss at the time could see that I had some of the more personnel managementy skills, than other people, or just than maybe I was better at that than the technical. But yes, it wasn't a sort of a role that I necessarily thought I was going to go into,
Mm.
or that I had training to go into.
Mm.
Training did come, but I do think it was later than it should have been. And I think this is one of the things that I in hindsight can see a lot of in various different kind of aspects is there's sort of the impetus on you've got to do it first, and then you'll go on this really big training course and it will teach you everything you need to know. But what about that just first stage, little bit of confidence, little bit of, okay, this, these are some really useful practical skills or tools or anything that will just help you in those first, the first year, the first couple of years. Especially at that stage, as a line manager, you are quite responsible for the people underneath you. They, this is a thing that has always bugged me. There's so many times in like employers' handbooks or emails or announcement that says, if you've got any issues, go and talk to your line manager. And suddenly you're a line manager and you've been given no training, no guidance. Well, I don't know anything more than everybody else. So I think that's definitely something that I would say can be improved. And I think that's, talking to lots of different people as well, I think that's very common across lots of different industries.
I would agree. And a report I was reading by the Chartered Management Institute was pointing out the widespread concern about the quality of management and its impact on workers' daily lives. And actually, there are two ways, I guess, we looking at this. One's about the impact on you, Sarah, as a manager, and one's about the impact of the people you're supposed to be managing. Because there's kind of two parts to that, isn't there, in terms of if you get managers in place who haven't been developed and supported and so on, actually has an impact kind of for that manager and their team. But there was a quote there that said, among those workers who told researchers they had an ineffective manager, 1/3 so they were less motivated to do a good job, and as many as half were considering leaving in the next 12 months. And when you look at figures like that, and I think, and also they said they had a finding it was about 82% of new managers in the UK are accidental. And you just and I still struggle to work out how, because this is not a new problem. It's been talked about for quite a long time. 82% of managers being considered accidental is staggering. I mean, we always knew it's high, but to start putting numbers on it like that, but then also to have the numbers that show what an ineffective, and again, people don't like the word ineffective because it feels like a bit like a blame and you're no good, but actually ineffective because you simply haven't been guided to know what's important. The impact that then has on the team, like, why is no one joining up all the dots? Why are people not seeing that? And that's what you've just said. So do you have a sense of, are the companies, and maybe other companies or people where they work, are people just not seeing it? Are they not joining up the dots? Or why are we still having this conversation?
Oh, I don't know.
I thought you were going to give me the perfect answer, Sarah. We can go like, right, that's what everyone needs to do, because it's staggering.
It really is. And I don't know if it's not seen as a big enough problem, because I don't know, the business is still coping, from a very kind of black and white point of view. If your business is still making money, you still got happy customers, is it that big a problem if staff come, they go, your managers come and go, and nobody's that happy at work?
You know what, I think,
yes, it is a big problem. But for some people it may not be.
Yeah, but I think I think you're probably right that people don't, to actually look at that problem, of actually, have they got the right people in the right role, and are they training and supporting, developing them as they should be? That's a huge focus. So, and people almost feel like they're treading water at the moment with the just the pace and the pressure on them to do what they consider their normal day job. So actually, to take this on seriously requires a lot of resource, and people, I don't think necessarily think they've got that.
Yeah.
But particularly if they are managing to tick over, and albeit not very effectively, but it's still moving roughly in the right direction. I was saying before we came on air that I've had a busy week. This week, one of the days I was in London talking at the Festival of Happiness, which is an amazing event arranged by the very forward-thinking Alliance of Independent Agencies. And they are all about how to support the workforce to be the best they can. And I was part of a panel, and we were talking about a report called, what's it actually called? Prioritize People, Unlock the Value of a Thriving Workforce. And it's by McKinsey and Business in the Community. And it's a brilliant report. And the reason it's brilliant is because it has had loads of input from CFOs, so talking about the financial benefits. So it's not, because there's always this thing about we haven't got time for this, and it's a bit of an add-on, or it's going to distract us from what we should really be focusing on. And there's been so much input from CFOs into this report to talk about the bottom line, the difference it makes, that the evidence in there, anyone who reads it and chooses not to do something with it, you feel like you really should not be in your leadership role. So there is the data that I think is beginning to emerge to present a clearer business case. But I guess for that to filter through to some companies, it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's great. That's great if it's got that kind of financial push to say, that it's for some of us, making sure people are in the right roles and happy in those roles and thriving is important. For other people, it's just not something they even necessarily consider. But for them, hopefully the money side of it will be. And I say, look, well, I don't care about people, but I care about money.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a benefit. But it'd be a huge challenge for any company to question who's in what role and are they the right people and what can be done better. As well, if you think about actually doing that, the people you're questioning are often senior people, and that's going to put some people's backs up. So it's I can see why people don't question it, but I think they should.
Yes, because otherwise the problems still exist and people are just choosing to ignore them. And and it's the cost, if it means it's impacting financially on a company, but it's still ticking along, people are okay with that, that's one thing. But it's the damage it does in terms of the feeling of burnout, people wanting to leave their jobs and so on. That's really not okay. So what was the impact for you then, in terms of you fell into this role in your last company, and that all came back quite organically, and you seem to have some of the skills that were aligned with that role. So in other words, that's why there was a reasonably good fit. But in terms of the impact on you, when you're suddenly in this, you are called a line manager and people are having to come to you with all their stuff, whatever that's about, whether that's personal work or whatever, and it's suddenly being dumped on your desk. What's the impact on you as a manager when you haven't had the support and development that you need?
It's hard. It still is, but it definitely was hard. And it knocked my confidence. When people would ask me questions, can you help me with this because it says ask the line manager? And my reaction had to be, I will try, but I don't know anything more than or I did have some great support people around, and that was, without that I wouldn't have been able to cope. And I could always say, I'll go and find somebody who might be able to help. But it's still, I would much rather have been able to say, yes, let's, I can help, as I'm sure most people would want to be able to. And getting my own confidence to be able to say that as well was difficult, because immediate reaction is, I've got to help, I've been put in this position, it says I should be able to do it, I must be able to do it. And then go, actually no, I'm in this position, my job is to support everybody, but I need support in doing that. So yeah, learning to say no, or learning to say I don't know the answer, but I will try and find the answer for you, took a while.
And even just hearing you say that, there are so many people who I know who are in manager roles, or when they've gone into manager roles, who wouldn't have the courage to say I don't know. So because that's I mean, that's actually role modeling brilliant psychological safety in terms of the manager can say, I don't know. That gives us all permission to say, I don't know, but there is a way of finding out the answer. So in a way, you're role modeling being very authentic, and that's great, but it still leaves you in a position of not knowing. The fact that you've had the courage to say to your team, I don't know, I'll go and find out, is great, because I think some people feel that as soon as they assume a role of manager, they're supposed to know everything, and they will then provide answers or direction or try to gain control where they don't necessarily feel they have control. And that can come across then as being quite bossy or just getting it wrong. They're giving messages that aren't necessarily the right messages, and there's a tension that can build quite quickly. And I've worked with quite a few companies where that's a problem, where managers are coming across as not having much empathy and so on, and not because they don't care, but because their default is being quite defensive. And it's like, I'm in this space, I've got to come up with an answer, I've got to be seen to be in control, when actually they feel far from it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there are people who definitely feel that. You see people answering things and you think, I'm not sure. You can say no, you can say I don't know, rather than trying to say what they think they should say, or what they think the person that asked the question wants to have as an answer. But no, I think one of my positive traits on being a manager, in my opinion, is that I am empathetic, and just naturally, I can't help it. And it's not something I've particularly worked on. I think that's just my character. But also, people can read me like a book. I'm very difficult. I find it very difficult to hide what I'm feeling. My face will say it, even if I don't. So if I pretended that I knew the answer, people would be like, "Sarah, you're making it up now, aren't you?" I'm like, yeah, I'm making it up. You can tell. So yes, probably a downfall in other things, but in that situation, yeah, definitely. And I think maybe people did see me pretending for a while. I don't know, it was a long time ago. But yeah, I think being authentic, being honest, it's got to be the right way to be. And I don't think anybody has ever criticized me for saying I don't know the answer. I don't imagine that would happen. But like you say, having the confidence to say I don't know the answer, even if that's the only thing that people can get when they get that line manager badge, some sort of and it's a soft skills training as well as practical training. You're suddenly thrown into this position, and you don't know what your responsibilities are, because that's not written down anywhere. There's no guidance sheet on what that really means. But you are also people's first port of support. And if you don't have any training in it, or guidance, or anyone who you can go to and be authentic and say, I don't know what to do in this situation, this person's said this, done that, come to me with this problem, whatever it is, you are going to really struggle if you don't have somebody somewhere who you can go to for your own support in that situation. I did. I don't know how I would have coped without that. But I'm sure there are people out there who don't have that, and or who don't feel they can ask.
I think it's interesting is that I mean, again, looking at some of the data in the reports of workers with an ineffective manager, only 15% of those felt valued and appreciated, against 72% who had an effective manager. Now, we know that feeling valued and respected and appreciated and having that trust, and that's all about your relationship, and that all comes down to the soft skills. They are so significant, because almost the kind of more tangible aspects of management role, in terms of who's got to do something when and where, and scheduling and so on, that's one part of their role. But I would argue that for a good manager to manage their team well, it is the soft skills that absolutely has to be the focus. Knowing how to have compassionate conversations, knowing how to, part of what we were talking about this Festival of Happiness was about, we talk a lot about psychological safety, but what does that actually look like? What should we be doing? How do we model that? And if we could just give managers an opportunity to access some bite-sized chunks of webinars or opportunities to just discuss it as a group, however, but there being a time when there's a particular focus on different aspects of the soft skills, and what that looks like and how that feels like, and the difference it makes, and getting people behind it, like really engage with it, because they know it's going to make a difference to them as well, rather than, I've been sent on this course, here's a big handbook, I've just got to get through it and then I can get back to my proper job. When we emotionally invest in something because we know it's going to make a difference to how we experience our work as well as our team, it's much more likely to stick, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is, and I don't think you can necessarily teach all the soft skills to all individuals. I don't think everybody has that way of thinking or way of feeling, but you can definitely help.
Yeah, you can. If someone has an interest in wanting to do something better or differently, so that has a more positive impact, then I think there are always things we can share with someone to think about how they can improve, for example, their interactions with someone. I think it's the problem is when there are people who don't necessarily have the skills, because that's not just part of their innate character, and they have no interest. Then it's like,
yeah.
And I've in a number of companies where they have got people in manager positions who don't have the right skills and competencies and confidence, and they're not really that interested, motivated to develop them to do what they need to do. And actually the impact that has on everyone else, it's a really hard decision then, but what you do with those individuals, those managers, and that comes back to the point we made earlier, are the right people in the right roles? Because if they're not, it can have quite devastating consequences for a lot of people, just in terms of those people coming to work every day and feeling like, I'm unsupported, I don't know what direction I'm going in, I don't have confidence that someone's got my back, all those really essential parts of what we need day to day.
Yeah. And I think that comment on someone having your back is so important, and I think it's there in lots of places. The support is there, and it's definitely something I felt. I tried to ensure my team felt, because with that it gives you confidence, it gives you the ability to push yourself and challenge yourself, and do things that might be outside of your comfort zone, but someone's going to help you if you need it. Someone's going to, they're not going to judge you, blame you, make your life difficult because you've tried something new. They're going to say, oh, okay, that didn't quite work, let's see how we can make it work. And yeah, I think that's what makes a team. I'm definitely someone that thrives in a team. And yeah, it's a great feeling. It's difficult to challenge yourself, but if someone's gonna help you pick it up if it goes wrong, then
that's a key bit, isn't it, Sarah? But it's that great feeling, because I think it's going back to the questions of how do we want to feel as a manager? How do I want to feel when I go to work? How do I want to feel in my role? How do I want my team to feel?
I just think if there are unlocking people to make them thrive, this shouldn't be new.
Exactly. So so actually one of the things that would be good to discuss is you started your role, you went into it, you had then some training that came later on. Was that training useful? Was that sort of stuff? Because it'd be really useful also just to understand actually, we've talked a little about how you intentionally shape your role and how what you want to feel and what you want to experience. But in terms of what your training looked like, is manager training meeting that need? Or is manager training tending to focus much more on the sort of technical management aspects of a role?
So the main like training program I did, I think was brilliant. It was I can't remember what it was called. I thought I was going to, but it was to do with teamwork. It may have been like managing a team or something like that. So there were lots of things that were directly relevant, and there wasn't too much jargon. I'm not a fan of jargon.
It is.
There's got to be people out there that are, because there's so much of it around. But I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
So that yeah, there were some things that I learned then that I still 100% use on a day-to-day basis. There were some things that I probably have forgotten, but I think that's the same with most training courses anyway. I think it's very rare that you will find a course that 100% you use every day. So no, there were some great things about building that team, getting that team feeling. One of the things I remember vividly, because I put it into practice sort of the few months after I got back from the course, was a team charter, which I really liked the idea of, because it was something that we developed together, and it was based on the company and what the company's, I can't remember if it was KPIs or values or something at the time. It was hierarchy. No, that's the wrong word. But it was the top level. Bullet points, and then we went, right, what does that actually mean to us? Because they're up there somewhere, and that's not how we operate. But let's drill down and actually make something that fits what we do on a day-to-day basis, or where we want to be. And people rolled their eyes when, oh, what's this? What, she's got on a management course. Now she's going to implement something. This is going to be a waste of time. But they did it anyway. And I think it was really positive, because it gave people that chance, like we were saying, it gave people a chance to think, to stop what you're doing on a day-to-day. Like, yes, there's loads of things on your to-do list, but stop doing all of that, and let's just spend half a day thinking about our team, where we are, where we want to be, how it fits in with the bigger picture. And we made ourselves accountable to it. And then we would check in on it every now and again. And I think it was positive. I certainly thought it was.
But that, and I can't see how that wouldn't be, because that's the bit for me that most teams don't do, in terms of working out how we work and how we interact with each other and how we work as a team. And all you end up doing otherwise is having a group of individuals all focus on their individual tasks, with one person, the manager, overseeing them, making sure that they're doing their tasks. But that's not really a team.
Yeah.
And for a team to work, everyone's got to know their part, how they've got to be able to read each other. They've got to know how each person wants to be engaged with and doesn't. They've got to be able to read signs that things are going well or not going well. They've got to know what each person's working on, what's important to them, and all those aspects of good teamwork. It can only come about really if you sit down and, again, consciously spend time shaping it and sharing and talking about what's important to us and how we get the best out of each other, and what I need for me to be my best today from everyone else in this team. And when you do the how, that's so powerful.
Yeah. And it is that it's being aware of everybody else's pressures and their personalities, and it's the emotional intelligence that is so key in those kind of, like you say, reading people and going, oh, hold on a minute, that's one of their signs that they're struggling. Okay, I'm not going to go and ask them to do any more today. I'll leave that till tomorrow. And all those aspects that you only get through spending time with people, through interaction. And I suppose it is just giving people that time as well. You know, not on a, right, you two go, go get this task finished. I need it done by tomorrow. It's just spend time, just put everything else aside. Let's all just stop, think about it all. And hopefully in a space that people can be honest and open to what you're trying to achieve, as well as to the other side of just getting to know people and spending time with them.
I think that pressing the pause and taking time is going to be a big barrier for a lot of people. They're like, we just simply don't have time. And I always think it's like, if you don't do it, you can still be running full speed ahead, but it's almost like you kind of got blindfolds covering at least one eye. You just are stumbling over things and bashing into each other, and there's that sense of we're all racing along, but it's not very effective, rather than actually almost having a bit of a team strategy meeting before you set off on the race. How are we going to do this, and how are we going to support each other, and who's going to struggle, and how do we help that individual? And having just that little bit of time so that they have got their eyes open and they're working together as a team. And the difference is just huge, but people don't think they've got the time to do the strategy bit, which is about how the team works. Yeah. And I think that's a real crux of the problem for a lot of people. If they just say, I don't have time to have these conversations, or I don't have the confidence to have the conversations. Like, I don't know what to ask. And you've given some really good examples of how simple your question can be in terms of, what is it, what do we want to do, or how do we want to feel when we're at work, or how do we want to, what's important to us in terms of aligning with the values, what do they actually look like, how will we know we're doing a good job? Those sorts of questions, you don't have to have the answers, and that's the beauty of facilitating that as a manager. You don't have to have the answers, the team will have the answers, and then you just work out from that, you pull the common threads together.
Yeah, definitely. And alongside all of that is the, what isn't your preferred task or way of working, or can actually, have we stopped to say, what do you really not like about your day to day? Oh, you don't like this bit, but that's that person's favorite area. Let's work to people's strengths. You can't always take away those tasks, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that comes back to, it's not the rocket science. I was talking with someone at this event in London this week about again, how to support managers to have good conversations with their team. We were talking about not waiting until you have your annual appraisal or your kind of quarterly review, but actually how to have more informal, very kind of frequent check-ins, which are not, there's no work agenda. It's just about, you might talk about work, but then the work is not about, are you reaching your goals? It's about how you're feeling, engaging with the work, what's going well, what's not. And we were talking about different, almost giving managers a sense of reassurance by giving them some prompts of the kinds of things that they could ask. And actually, one of the resources we talked about were Mind, as the charity, their wellness action plans. And again, there are ones for managers to use with their teams. There are wellness action plans for managers to use with hybrid workers, remote workers, and so on. And I think if people have got nothing to use, but they want to do something more, then just looking at those, because they're free to download online, and again, tweaking the questions to look at, okay, this is all about wellness, but how do I change some of the questions be, rather than just about what do you need to feel well, is what do you need to, maybe to work well, what do you need from your members of your team, and actually just starting to use that as a basis for constructing some questions if people are feeling completely stuck with any of this sort of stuff. I don't know how you have your check-ins with your team. How often do you do that? What does that look like?
Well, at the moment,
Two
tricky.
things. What's it going to look like?
But I think I will hopefully try and implement things that I think have been the best that I've had over my previous career, um, and it will hopefully be personal to each individual. There is, it's a combination of hybrid and in the office workers. So it's for me, it's much easier in person. My favorite is, let's just go for a walk.
Yeah.
And just, there's no notebook, no one's taking notes, there's no real, I mean, there might be some actions, but there'll be the two that you can remember in your head. And it's, and it just starts with the how actually are you? Not just how are you? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks, move on. It's how are you? Are you feeling okay about this, that, or the other? It will probably feed from what I know that they're working on or struggling with, as a starting point. But yeah, I think having prompts is great. Having some, I'm going to say, an agenda in your head, and I don't mean that I want the outcome to be. It's more of a, right, I do want to check in with them on this. They've mentioned this previously. I need to remember to ask about that. And if there's anything, work related coming up that you want to, I don't know, get their opinions on or give them a heads up on or anything like that. Then, having that, just a little tick list in your head to say, I do want to cover these areas is good. But if you don't, you don't, if they want to talk about something else, they want to talk about something else. And that's also absolutely fine. It's really their time. It's not my time. It's their time. But yeah, the hybrid, having a catch up over Teams or Zoom is, for me, more challenging because it's more question answer rather than full conversation. But there are little things you can do. You can schedule it in and say, right, if that person drinks tea, coffee, get a cuppa ready, get comfortable, put your camera on, we're going to have a chat. It's not, right, I'm going to book a meeting 3 o'clock till 3:15. It's called catch up. It's like, no, that's not, you might have those for other things, but that's not a proper, how are you? Let's check in for those other things that aren't I need to catch up with you on this project or this agenda.
And there's also, I guess, a middle place, which is what I'm a fan of, because I like, what you're saying about going for a walk and having a chat while you're walking. It's really informal, and it's nice that people are not looking at each other, because often it feels very direct and you're under the spotlight over a video call. I'm a real fan of walk and talks on the phones. So again, if you can't do it because you're not physically located nearby, I try to do as much as I can with people when I'm talking to them. It's like, we'll talk about where they are in the country, what the weather's like. We'll be talking about the fact that you can hear loads of traffic or loads of wind or whatever's going on. And you just talk about how you're feeling, but you can do it while you're doing a 20-minute walk, which for me is brilliant, because it means someone's escaping their desk, someone's getting some fresh air. Sometimes it's horrendous rain or something, in which case we will bail, but we always make sure, right, we're going to go stand in our kitchen with a cup of tea, like you said, or something, getting away from your workspace. And I think it just sets a different scene, doesn't it? Because even with all the intention of sitting in front of a screen and having a chat, people are still in their work space mentally, because this is physically, I'm in my workspace, and mentally this is another Zoom call or it's another Teams call. And actually just breaking that pattern just makes it feel friendlier.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm going to take that one away for sure. So thank you. Also a big fan of a coffee shop, a cafe,
yes.
Anywhere that you can, like you say, keep it informal, because it's not formal. It's
exactly.
If you are, sitting in the meeting room, it automatically has that work feel.
I also really like what you said, Sarah, about it's their agenda. So you talk about whatever comes up for them, because you don't I think, again, too often as managers, there's a thought that we need to have an agenda, or we need to be pushing the conversation along, or I don't feel comfortable having silences, I've got to fill it, or actually, I know I'm not supposed to be talking about work right now, but I just want to ask about this particular project. When you allow these spaces and you ask open questions, and you're just, your team members well enough to ask them about something that's going on in their family, or a holiday, or whatever it might be, and you just see what comes, what's feeling good this week, and but open, like it could be nothing to do with work, and you just see where the conversation goes. I don't think people necessarily sit back enough to listen. They want to talk, or they want to direct the question by asking specific questions. So it's that sense of direction rather than and filling and talking, rather than sitting back and just listening.
Yeah. And if needed, bring it back to that. If it goes into a work zone, let that happen for a bit, because if especially if they've brought it up, it's obviously in their mind. But then try and just say, you've had that was really, really useful to catch up on that. I just want to check in that you're feeling okay about this, or if it needs a more of a kind of specific prompt. There will be something, there'll be a change that happened, or there's something somewhere that you can use as a, are you feeling okay about that? Or you shouldn't say, are you feeling okay about that? Because the answer will probably be yes. But further more than that, how do you feel about that?
Excellent. So I want to change tact slightly now, and actually explore a little bit about management versus leadership. And the reason I want to do that is because it's a point that actually you've made, and so it's something you're really passionate about. So I wanted to pick up on that. Is something that there's so much commentary around. Is it the same thing? Is it something different? Like what? And so many people use the words interchangeably. So actually, and I know this is a bit of a bugbear for you, so I want to understand from someone who has been in the experience, in the role of managing, but also leading, what it actually means for you, and if it's important to have a difference or not.
Great. I love this. Love it. So I think, I don't know how to go first with this. I think it's a challenge. It's a real challenge, because, and possibly it's just the wording, I don't know. It's like the articles recently on, ineffective managers, blah, blah, blah. Do they mean managers, or do they mean leaders? Because for me, there is a big difference. And I think you need both. You need somebody to manage. You need somebody to make sure things happen. And in my opinion, that's managing. I mean, sort of going aside here, but the word itself even has negative connotations. It's more like coping. Yeah, I'm managing. That's just barely, that's okay. I'm coping. Definitely not thriving. I'm coping. I think, wow, that's the term that we use for people who are supposed to be nurturing, developing, growing teams, businesses? For me, it's not quite right. But actually, that just to manage something, you often need to manage something, be it work, be it something in your personal life. Getting everything in order to make whatever it is happen and work, and the outcome to be positive. It needs managing. We all need those skill sets in our team somewhere. Otherwise, things just won't happen. But leading is very different, because that's somebody who can see change, can see direction, can help people get there. And do we really think that person is the same person who can organize everything, make sure it happens? I mean, are there enough hours in the day for all of that? As well as the skills. And I think there is likely to be one area that person is better at than the other. or an area they find easier than the other, and therefore do more of that side of it because it's naturally just easier for them. That's their comfort place. So I don't know.
I think that's a really, really interesting point. And it reminds me, I was in a company yesterday having some one-to-one meetings, interviews, get some data and so on with a range of managers and leaders. And what came out of that was just the pressure on trying to do both. And actually, because the management is almost, the management part of their role is almost more in demand, like it's more immediate. Someone needs something, they need to be told what to do or where to do it or how to do it or something like that. It's almost the more kind of immediate, tangible stuff. That's the stuff that was filling all their time. And the ability to step back and lead and be a bit more strategic and develop and all the stuff that was really important, they all were voicing their kind of concern that wasn't happening enough and it wasn't feeling good enough for them. They don't, we all have a limited capacity, and it's, you choose one because it feels easier or it's more aligned with your own interests, or it's just the stuff that it literally is in your face and you can't get away from it.
Yeah.
And I think it's, that's partly contributing to the number of leaders who are experiencing burnout. And there are a huge number who are just getting to the point going, I just can't keep up with it, because there's just too much being expected of an individual when they are trying to do such a broad role. So whether there is an argument to distinguish a bit more between, this is someone who just needs to manage, and it's, you still got to manage and get on with people, so you still got to have all that side, and then maybe there's a different place for people to lead. I'd be interested to know how you would help. So for example, at OceanWise, if you were going to come in like 2 weeks in, I'm going to tell you we need to rethink this, how would you be helping them define what a leader would be focusing on and what that role would look like as opposed to a manager?
So I don't know, and I don't think I know the company well enough for it to be a valid answer. I think the first thing that springs to my mind, and that's probably from within me, is the nurturing and developing people. There's part of me that thinks I should have been a teacher at some point, but it's that's definitely for me part of what a leader should be. They should be able to get to know people, get to know where they want to go, what they're struggling with, and be able to help them to thrive, as we said before. For me, that's definitely something so important, and something that would easily fall away if you're bombarded with management spreadsheets and management meetings and management this and management that. Because like you say, it's coming at you. You've got to have it done by the end of tomorrow. You've got to have this done by then. You've got to think about this. It's got to be, attend this meeting, attend that. And it's like, oh, when do I have time to spend coaching, nurturing, mentoring?
And that's the stuff without the deadlines, isn't it? That's always the stuff that's going to get bumped out.
Yeah. But without it, people won't thrive. Or they'll move on, as their way of potentially, developing, if that's what they think they want to do. And that's for me what I would love to stop happening everywhere. I think people are, there's definitely I don't want to stop it happening. Obviously, people need their careers, but for me, I like to invest my time in people, and I would love to be able to do that enough so that they really see a long-term career in that role. And I think the there's definitely a change in how long people spend in their roles, or in their companies, should I say, really, because I think although I spent an awful lot of time in one company, I had lots of different roles there.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people don't necessarily look at when they are thinking, if they're thinking, oh, I think am I a bit done with what I'm doing? Fine, I'll look elsewhere. Well, look internally first, what other opportunities are there? And not just, well, there's no vacancies on the website. Talk to people, what else, what's your key area of interest? Is that something that we can develop into a role?
Mm.
Or, and have that conversation of, this is where I want to go. Do you think that's going to be possible in the next couple of years? Oh yeah, that completely aligns with what we were thinking, going down this path, or whatever. So yeah, I think if people don't have that mentoring, nurturing feel, they might not think to ask, oh, they'll help, and sort of realize that, oh, the company will help me get there as well.
Mm.
But
Yeah, I like that.
yeah.
So how are you going to, or how have you, because you're 2 weeks in, how are you intentionally going about thinking about your role at OceanWise in terms of whether you're a leader or a manager, how you're balancing that out, how you're looking after yourself in that process so you're not at risk of burnout? How are you going around about shaping your role?
So at the moment, I very much think I'm in a very nice place of not too much responsibility, and in a sort of what I would say like discovery phase. So I'm very much getting to know people and the work, which is again just a great opportunity to have that time to do, rather than being thrown into, oh, fix this or do that, do this, do that, do that. So I'd say I'm very much in that at the moment. My plan really is to, I haven't put a time scale on it, but probably the next few weeks ish, have more targeted conversations with people, because I really want to know what people want from me. I want to ask everybody who I manage as part of my team what I want to find out, what they want from me, who they want me to be, how they want to interact with me, and what both of them, they need to be their best. Is that something that's already there and we just need to, maintain, nurture, or is it something that we need to change or implement, or actually they think it's going to come in 6 months because this, that, and the other? Definitely want to find out all of that, because I think that will shape how I am as a person, to them, and also where I spend my time, learning. I also want to find out from those above me what they want me to do. Hopefully the two meet in the middle somewhere. But that's definitely my plan. And I will ask, some blunt questions of, how good is this? What do you feel about this? And what's the other one we had a conversation about a couple of weeks ago? I've got it written down somewhere. It was, how do you want to feel when you get to work each day? And how do you feel? And how far apart are they? And what can we do to bridge that gap?
Nice.
My general feeling is that, I mean, it seems a very, very happy, very positive environment. I don't feel like I've got a huge challenge ahead. But I'm sure there can be, there'll be things that people mention that I haven't even considered because I haven't asked the questions yet.
Yeah, But I like your yet, because you will get to ask those questions.
Yeah.
I also like the point you made about finding out from people above you what they're wanting of you, and you're hoping that aligns with what you want or your team wants of you. And I think if it doesn't, then that's where you need to get that research out, these reports. I'll make sure I put those as links into this episode, because that's got the data to say, actually, the reason, my team wants this, and if I can deliver that for them, this is the difference it's going to make. And I think if we can use data and evidence to point upwards in terms of, that is why I'm working like this, so just give me some space to develop my role how I want to develop it and what's needed of me, and then the results speak for themselves. What training or development or support are you experiencing at the moment in terms of shaping your role?
Lots of like one-to-one training on the company and the procedures and everything else, which is great. And it feels not very time constricted. So it's, which is for me is great, because I have so many questions, and I don't feel restricted. I don't feel that, we've only got 15 minutes to do this, so stick to the bare bones. If it goes off on a tangent and we delve into different things, that's welcomed, that's encouraged, and for me that's so positive, because if I had come in and I'd felt restricted early on, I'd be like, when do I get to ask those questions? If not now, then when? So that side of it's definitely felt very positive for me.
That's really good. And I know you've been you have come along to the leadership lab that I'm running with Gemma.
Yeah.
For you, that was, because when we were looking at the last lab was all around intentional leadership and so on, and all about creating that space. And to hear you talking about how you are going in and what you're going to be asking your team, and how you're thinking about shaping your role, for me, that's so it's so rewarding, so powerful, because you're going and doing exactly what Gemma and I keep talking to companies, saying, please, can you give your managers more space to do this stuff, your leaders more space to do this stuff? And you have described brilliantly how you are setting up your role with intention. And I know that was kind of one of the focus, that was one of the experiments that came out of the lab, is that people talking about how they're going to feel more confident in their role as a leader, or how they're going to make sure that they're, as a leader, they are providing what their team needs. And I think you have described that brilliantly today. So I know Gemma's going to be really happy listening to this episode.
Oh, that's great. I think, and it makes me sad, really, that I haven't done it before. That I wasn't equipped with any of this thought process, really. And I've this, I don't know, if I think about it, maybe this is like the fourth team I've led. And it's like, what, I didn't do the best I could have done previously. And maybe I just managed and I didn't lead. And hopefully I can do more of the leadership now.
Yeah.
But it's when do we put ourselves, or when do we give ourselves time for that, or when is it offered? It's like we said, it's not the training on management, on leadership, I don't think is given enough weight when I think it should be.
I agree. And I think that's a good place to wrap up, because I think that is the underlying message. There's just not enough emphasis, there's not enough focus. And I think your feeling about maybe I could have done more, actually you weren't given the space to do more. You weren't enabled to do more. And I think that then is it affects you, and it comes back to you were put in the deep end, you got through it, your team got through it, but even now you still think, oh, what if? And I think hopefully as the tide changes and people are grasping this or beginning to grasp this, hopefully, that we need to be giving people more time and space to develop, then that will make a big difference, because they will, from their first management role, they will be more equipped to do that well, because there is so much more awareness now compared to when you took on your first management role, and people really just didn't think about this sort of stuff at all. It's changed. So we're not going to just chat openly anymore about this, because we could go on and on for hours, and I could pick your brain even more. But what I want to do, just to finish, is to hear any concrete actions that you think people listening to this, whether they're a manager, whether they're a leader, could go away and think, actually, we need to rethink how we're doing things. What would be your key pieces of advice?
So I think, as we've mentioned, I think one of the things is training time, or however it wants to be labeled. Development time maybe is better, because I don't want people to think, oh, but people go on training courses all the time. That's not what everybody needs. And looking at this just from a management leadership kind of point of view, I think people need time to think about that, and whether it's a dedicated, I don't know, half a day a month or half an hour a week, whatever it is, and each individual will probably be different. Some people might go, all right, I'm taking a week this week in the year, and that is when I'm going to think about my soft skills side of things. But giving people that time to spend thinking about the soft skills of leadership, I think would be a huge benefit. And it needs time, because there's a lot out there, and you'd have to filter through until you found something that really resonated with you. And not everything, something that I thought was brilliant, other people won't, because their brains are wired differently. Everybody's brains are wired differently, and different things work for different people. So I'd definitely say that's something that I think would be a huge improvement in lots of places. I think, I don't know if this would ever work, but one thing I really think is, and I think there are a lot of manager level people who don't have the confidence or the skills or the training or the mentoring for themselves to have to be the best they can be at their role. And is there a way that companies can offer coaching in that is specific to those people, not a lunch and learn once a month that everybody listens to on a big massive Zoom call, but access to, and I don't know if it has to be in person, maybe not in this world, but access to a coaching style resource that can just be there, and that, like, and maybe especially for those people who don't have that shoulder to ask questions to. That's not the phrase.
But I hear you exactly, because it's, again, out of the leadership lab, it was a really common theme, wasn't it, that people said how lonely they feel, isolated, and that was something that was a shared experience in that lab, and it just said everything. That one experience, and actually it just shows the value of having someone who you can go and talk to and share with and offload to, or ask for advice or whatever. And it's more than a mentor. It's someone, is much more of kind of coaching type of relationship, but someone who again has got your back and who's there for you to support you and guide you forwards.
And maybe it's linked, but I think the other thing I think would be a nice challenge for business leaders to think about is I'd like a comparison between how much they spend on recruitment and how much they spend on retention. And that's not retention in the, oh, we've got, I don't know, there's, everybody has the same statutory level of leave and blah, 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 blah. That's across lots of businesses. It's got to be proper retention. What are you actually doing? How much are you actually spending to keep people engaged, to develop those people? Because it's why are these two things? I mean, it's a complete guess, but I expect people spend a lot more on recruitment than they do on retention.
And it reminds me actually of the conversation I had on this podcast. I'll put a link to it actually with Emma Browning. We talked about stay interviews, and it's about how are you finding out from people what is going to make them stay, what they need to stay, rather than just waiting for everyone to get out the door and then ask them why they left, and then maybe we'll do something with that information or maybe not.
No, that's the other thing. Do something with that information.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much data, isn't there? And that it just doesn't inform practice. Yeah.
No, stay interviews. That is great.
I'll send you the link to that as well. Sarah, you have been amazing today. Thank you so much. Is it okay if we put your contact details as well in the show notes?
Yeah, sure.
If they want to. I have to say, OceanWise are very lucky to have you, and it'll be really interesting. Maybe we should touch base again in a year or something to see what's happened and whether all these ideas that you've been able to implement and change practice there. So watch this space. But thank you so very, very much.
Oh, well, thank you. I think it's been, like I said, it's almost been some therapy for me, just having the time to think about it and focus on it, and giving me pointers on to how I want to be, what I want to do. So maybe touch base in a year, see if it's done.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. I invite you to think about one thing that you will take away to think about or do differently. I'd be really grateful if you can give me a thumbs up on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and for an extra brownie point, leave me a short review. I'm really keen to help drive real change for better practice in the world of people at work, and spreading the message will help that. I'd love you to also join the club to stay in the loop and be the first to hear about exciting things that I'm developing, including free downloadable resources. Please do reach out to me directly to discuss the topics covered on this podcast, or perhaps other challenges around people at work. And if we're not already acquainted on LinkedIn, please connect. All the links you need are in the show notes. So until next time, bye for now.